Hey guys, welcome back to a new video. I'm Stephanie Fisher. I'm a licensed counselor here in the state of Michigan, and I am owner and operator of In Progress Counseling. We're going to start at the bottom of the defense mechanism hierarchy, and we're going to start with one of the languages, the most immature forms of a defense mechanism. And what you'll notice as we build up the hierarchy, you'll notice that there is an increased complexity as we go, which actually is typifying kind of stages of development. So when we start at the bottom of the hierarchy, we're actually talking about experiences or reactions or behaviors that we might actually see in young children. And it's perfectly appropriate in young children. Not that the behavior or the conduct is okay, but it's a very typical stage of development that a child should pass through. Now, this is important as we build up the hierarchy, because you'll notice the more mature we go, what we're talking about is developmental advancement. What we're also talking about is maturity over time. So if someone's coming in, or I'm out in the world witnessing someone doing one of these lower level functionings, what I would conceptualize is, how do we mature them to a more complex position to be operating from? So at the base level, there's going to be 3 of them. And I think we're going to do, the video today will be one, and then maybe the next video will be the second and the third one. And we'll kind of lump a couple together. There we go. Or we might do just one if it warrants like a more robust explanation. And over time, we should get through kind of that whole hierarchy of adaptations and hierarchy of defense mechanisms. So we would say that this first one is one of the most immature forms of a defense mechanism. Now, it's not psychotic, meaning we wouldn't call this psychopathology. We would just say this is immature. And it's actually just called acting out. And what acting out is, it's a defensive strategy where at the level of my subconscious, I'm trying to bring myself back to equilibrium by doing something that's an acting out behavior. Now, as we add complexity, you'll notice that there's a lot of language worked in. This one's not language, this one's behavior, which tells us it's even a little bit more primitive. So language starts to be more developed, more complex. It starts to move into different parts of the brain. But this one is just straight reaction, and we call it acting out. And so this is a temper tantrum or a meltdown. This is a, maybe even an assault, some type of like lashing out. But it has to be tied to an attempt to emotionally re-regulate. And so I'll actually work with some of my clients when we're walking through the idea of boundaries, and we talk about like an avoidant attachment type. So I'm bringing maybe too much stuff in here, but I think this really elucidates what I'm hoping to explain here. We all have like a bite threshold. Now, I talked about that 300 videos ago, frankly. But what that means is, if you back someone into a corner and they're becoming dysregulated, and maybe they're the avoidant type where they like power down and retreat, but they're not being able to, for whatever reason, they're feeling like backed into a corner, you might get that acting out or that lashing out. I'll with my clients talk about like a rat baring its teeth and it's just like hissing at you. And the goal is to do whatever one can do to get the stressor away so I can come back to okayness. Now, we're not saying the behavior is okay. We're saying it's actually really immature, and that person who's feeling kind of proverbially backed into the corner and so they act out, that person has some maturation that really needs to be happening at the level of defense mechanism. But we all have that potential where you strip us of enough resources, back us into a corner and threaten our lives. We're saying this is primal. It's at our most kind of basic instinct of reaction potentially. Again, we're not excusing bad behavior. We're explaining it through the lens of some more maturity is needed, but it tells us the level of dysregulation that that person might be experiencing, that like all other resources feel outside of their scope of what they're able to grab. And so they act out, they lash out. The goal is to re-regulate their emotions or to come back to safety. That's going to be consistent framing that will be used all throughout this kind of defense mechanism series. The goal is to emotionally re-regulate. So we're not saying it's even permissible behavior. What we're saying is there's a consistent theme and goal tied through all of these strategies, and it's emotional regulation. And it's to protect the ego and to help the self feel as safe as possible. Acting out, it's in the behavior, it's a high level of reaction, it's pre-language. That's one of the most immature defenses that we might have access to, or that might show up when we're the most dysregulated. So that's our introductory video to different types of defense mechanisms. We're starting with order one, most immature, acting out.